Before heading to the video, if you haven't subscribed the channel, do subscribe it and don't forget to click the bell icon for the latest update notification. If you like the video, do like, comment and share. Stay tuned with learnway.co. Happy learning!
Today we will see support vector machine, somewhat kind of a tricky algorithm. Again, lot of hit and try is there. And by the way, grid search CV which we have discussed is actually built up for this particular algorithm. Okay, so now engineers has developed that grid search CV to find out the optimal parameters for the SVM algorithms. But now what happens, all other algorithms have also started using that grid search CV algo. So basically this was the algorithm which has created that grid search CV concept. And another thing is support vector machines is not so all other ML algorithms has been created by the statistician. This algorithm has been created by the computer scientists, computer engineers. So support vector machine is relatively a younger algorithm which has been developed into 90s. All your other remaining algorithms has been developed into 60s or 50s. Even neural networks were developed into 60s and 70s. So relatively a younger algorithm, and we will see where to use it and how to use it. Again, a classification algorithm. Okay, and we will see on which kind of classification it got used. So SVM is related to statistical learning theory. SVM was first introduced into 1992. SVM becomes popular because of its success in handwritten digit recognition. So there is a classical dataset called as MNIST dataset. Most of you would have been, if looking into Google, you would have got this name. So MNIST dataset is a digit recognition dataset where this algorithm has performed very well comparative to all other remaining algorithms available. So SVM is now regarded as an important example of kernel methods, one of the key area in machine learning. So we will see what is kernel method, because kernel is basically the main core heart of this particular algorithm. Okay, so now what happens, linear classifiers. So just I'll just give you one example. Suppose you have a data available and you want to do the classification of that data. Suppose you have this kind of data available, and then you have two classes available. Okay, now simple, I can put a threshold, and what I can say if any value is greater than this particular x and this is y coordinate, so it is greater than this threshold will be class plus, and if less than this particular threshold it will be class minus. So these kind of simple classification are called as linear classifications, and these kind of classifiers are called as linear classifiers. Now today I will introduce two new things. One is linear data and another one is non-linear data. Very important interview question. Okay, you will definitely get this question into an interview. What is linear data and what is a non-linear data, and what is linear classifier and what are non-linear classifiers. So right now we are discussing about the linear data. So this is your linear data set where your plus and minuses are easily separable via the line. So now what happens into these kind of linear classifiers, so suppose you have blue dots and you have white dots, so these are two classes and these are simply linearly separable. If I will be putting a line, then it will easily segregate this data. Now again, for classifying this particular thing, how many lines are possible? This line is possible, this line is possible, this line is possible, this is one more line is possible. So infinite number of lines are possible. So now what is the best line I can use here? Which one will be the best line for classifying purpose?
Which is equidistant from both.
Okay. How you select this particular line in case of linear regression?
Best fit line.
No, best fit line, how you select it?
Give the
Root means
minimum
square
error,
Root means
which give the minimum error.
RSS.
Okay, so we use RSS. And what is RSS?
Residual.
Okay, what is this? What it does?
It calculates the least value from the nearest data point.
No, wrong.
It is the error
It will sum
from the
all the
predicted
errors
and actual value.
from the predictive and the actual.
So basically this is the formula for residual sum of square error. So that is for linear regression, but let's discuss about our SVM classifier. Read it guys, okay, go through it if you don't remember or if you don't know or if you forget. So go through the videos, you will get what is this residual sum of square error. So now lot of lines are available. So now the difference in SVM, how it classify, how it select the lines, it's not basically the equidistance. I got your point. Yes, it should be logically the equidistant point, but what it does, suppose
Margin
you,
should be maximum or hyperplane we draw from the point which is
no. So now what happens? What it will do? It will take two nearest opposite vectors or entities. So two opposite nearest vectors are this one. Okay. Now what it will do? It will create a margin. Okay. Now this whole boundary will be, this whole width will be taken as a parameter for classifying any value. So any value above this boundary will be classified as plus, below this boundary will be classified as minus. So now what happens whenever you will be plotting a data set, what it will do, it will take two opposite nearest points and it will draw a boundary between them, and that will be called as a classifier margin. Okay, so because this particular classification margin is being supported via the vectors or the objects available into your data set, that is why the name has been given support vector machine. So reason is name is support vector machine is because the boundary for classification has been supported by your vectors of the opposite class. So that is how it identifies the boundary, and instead of giving only a single line, it gives the boundary. So what it does, the accuracy of classification will be higher, model will be more robust. So this is called as your linear classifier in SVM. Till here, any questions?
why will not this be equidistant?
That is a method they use by supporting vector. So what will happen, this margin, rather calculating via the equidistance, they are calculating withdrawing a whole boundary itself. Now what will happen via this particular boundary creation, the chances of error will be less, so your model will be more robust.
No, after creation will this not be equidistant?
No, so no, it will not be equidistant because there is a possibility this one is bigger, this one is smaller, or this one is bigger and this one is smaller. Possible, anything can be possible in this case. Any questions, other questions? So model internally creates this. So I'll show you the diagrams now. So now this is one diagram where you have to draw the classifier line, but so multiple lines are possible like this. So now here these many lines are possible. So now what SVM does, SVM creates a boundary, and this boundary will be supported via the nearest vectors. Okay, so the nearest vectors of two opposite class will support this particular boundary. So that is why it is called as support vector machine or SVMs. Okay, now this is called as linear classification, or this is called as linear data set. But this is not why we use the SVM algorithm. This is a very basic kind of classification which any algorithm can do, logistic regression and anything. But why it is getting used is because of non-linear data. So I'll show you the non-linear data example. What is non-linear data? Suppose now this I have to, what is kernel trick?
Increasing the dimension from low dimensions to high dimensional.
How?
How it introduces more features?
How we can introduce more features? Okay, so don't tell if you don't know something. Okay. Now how you want to so how we can classify this particular thing? Anyone wants to answer? So how I should divide this data so these two classes will be classified via the line?
Via the line, this cannot be done.
Not possible, I think.
It is not possible. Okay. So basically these kind of data sets are called as non-linear data sets. Okay. So non-linear data sets, and the algorithm which works on these kind of data set are called as non-linear machine learning algorithms. Now non-linear machine learning algorithm is SVM. So basically SVM is being designed for these kind of data sets, not for linear. So because linear classification, any algorithm can do that. Okay, any algorithm can learn those thresholds via decision tree, random forest, or any other kind of thing. But when it comes on to this kind of data set, then your remaining machine learning algorithms fails. So that is where SVM comes into picture and play its role. So I will show you now what machine learning algorithms does in this kind of case. So now you have something called as 2 dimensions available, X and Y. Now you have this data available, our same data point we will draw. Okay. Now what happens in this case? What will happen? This is X and Y. Now I will create one more dimension. So I will say this dimension is Z. Suppose I am creating one more dimension, Z is equal to X square plus Y square. So now for each of the value of these plus and minuses, I have 2 values available, X coordinate and Y coordinate. So I'll generate a new value for each of these points or vectors available into my data set, and I will call that as a Z, new dimension. So now my system will look like this: X, Y and Z. And now with respect to these 3 points, when I will be plotting this, my data set will look like this. So now in 3 dimension, can I segregate these 2 points? So now in 3 dimension, how to segregate? So which particular thing I have to use here?
Hyperplane.
No, plane. Plane. Okay, so now I can just directly use a plane, and below the plane it will be always negative values, and above the plane it will be always positive value.
For
now
higher dimensions, it will be hyperplane, right?
More than 3 dimensions, it will be hyperplane. Okay, more than 3 dimensions cannot be shown. Okay, so now this particular function, which is converting the data from the existing dimension to the new dimension, is called as kernel trick. Okay, or kernel functions, kernel function, or simply kernel. Okay, so now there are internally in your SVM, they have implemented few types of kernels. So you have these many type of kernels available: linear kernel, polynomial kernel, and you have something called as radial kernel. Okay, now whenever your data set is of linear type, you have to do kernel is equal to linear. Whenever your data is of non-linear type, you have to try with kernel is equal to polynomial or radial. So now what happens internally? It converts your linear data into non-linear data into the linear format, and then it do the classification of your data. So many of the times in the analytics industry, when you will be working, you will be getting the cases where what will be the problem, that classification will not be robust. Now why it will not be robust, I'll tell you. Now what will happen, this value and this value, or both of these values are almost having the similar features. This value and almost this value, all these 3 values are having almost similar features. Now what will happen when your classifier will be learning on the basis of features which class it is? It will say that every time it will say minus is also a type of plus class. So that is the reason SVM algorithm had been developed, that if we have that data set of this kind, then has to be handled in some particular way. Now I'll show you some photo for this particular thing. So now nonlinear SVM feature space. So basically this is the data. Now this data is not segregable into this two-dimensional space, but when I have used some kernel functions and added one more dimension, now it is separable. So in a three-dimensional space, it is separable. So guys, have you, whoever is from the science maths background, you remember we were having something called as Laplace algorithm. Have you heard of this Laplacian Laplace? Yes or no?
I heard, but don't remember.
Okay, so I also don't remember. So just for giving you example, I have taken it. So I'll tell you actually what we used to do into Laplace. So probably few of you may remember. I also don't know fully, but I also forgot. But I'll tell you what happens into Laplace. Now what happens? Suppose you have some function e raised to the power sine at dt. So you have to do the integration of this particular function. Okay, this is your question. Now what happens in mathematics when you do integration and differentiations and Fourier transforms and all those things? When you do, there are few functions where the integration is not possible. So we when we do the solving of the linear equations or linear algebra, there are sometimes we are seeing the optimal solution, single equation but multiple solution, no solution possible. Have you heard of these terms in 6th or 7th class when we were reading algebra, that no solution possible, optimal solution, many solution for one equation, right? So similarly, there are some functions where there are no solution possible into their current domain. So right now it is available into T domain. Now what Laplace has done, Laplace was a scientist, he developed some Laplacian system. So in Laplacian system, what happens, your formula for sine at might be, I might be wrong. So Laplace will be s square a square plus t omega square, something was the a square plus s square was the formula. Similarly, you were having the formulas for cos at 1 upon s square plus a square, something like that. Then for e raised to the power t, we were having the formula as 1 upon s square or probably 1 upon s, something like that. So these kind of formulas we were having. Now what happens, what it was doing, 1 upon s square into s square divided by s square plus a square. Now what happens in Laplacian, we used to solve this particular equation and so on, and you will be keep on solving, and finally at the end, if you remember, whatever answer you are getting, you will again converting back into the format of t, a square t into at. So now what happens, first line and last line answer will be into the terms of t, remaining whole calculation is into s domain. So what happens, there are few functions which are not solvable into the t domain, but when you are converting their dimension from t domain to s domain, they become solvable. Okay, solution is possible. So that is what Laplace has given. So what we were doing, there were some integration problems which were not integrable into the t domain. So what we are doing, we will be converting it into the s domain. We are solving it into the s domain and reconverting into the t domain. So this is basically a kind of kernel. So I can say that Laplace is also a kind of a kernel. Why it is a kernel? Because now what happens, if there is any problem, there is any equation which is not solvable into a particular domain, but when I convert it into the Laplacian domain, it becomes solvable. So similarly, that is what we called as kernel. So kernels are nothing but these are the mathematical equations implemented into your system. So Laplacian, Fourier, all these are the kernel functions which are implemented into your particular algorithm. So now what happens when you use these kernel functions? So in this current dimension system, two-dimensional system, it is not resolvable. But now what happens when you will be moving it to a upper higher dimension, you are adding one more dimension and you are using the kernel, your data will become separable. Okay, so this is the main feature of SVM where we are using the SVM. Now choosing the kernel function. So three types of kernels are available: polynomial kernel, radial kernel, and linear kernel. So polynomial and radial kernel we are using for nonlinear data. Linear kernel we are using for linear data classification. Now Question to you guys: how you will find out that your data set is linear or non-linear? So now if I will be showing you some CSV file, by seeing a CSV file, can you tell me that, okay, if it is a linear data or non-linear data?
No.
So how you will find out that my data is linear in nature or non-linear in nature? How you will decide this? I'm not expecting that you will be knowing the answer, but if you can think of something, I will be very happy. Otherwise, I'll clear it to you.
If you can draw a chart,
Visualization, LM plots.
Visualization, how it will help you that your data is linear or non-linear?
like say like
Sometimes we
you have
can disintegrate two different classes visually or something like that.
Okay.
Sometimes it's
Any
in
other
radial,
thing?
sometimes it is in radial fashion, so it is non-linear.
Okay. Yes, Irfan was saying something. Rushang was saying something.
yeah, I was saying the same thing. I can let's say we have two classes, right, in target, right? And now if you want to draw, I will see like how the data is
Okay, so
visualized.
till now we have not seen anywhere that our data is linear or non-linear via the graphs. But what we have seen if our data is normally distributed or not. So normal distribution is different thing, and linear and non-linear data is a different thing. So if we have plotted that pair plots and different kind of correlation charts, those are different things. They have nothing to do with the linearity or non-linearity. Yes, guys.
Utrikesh, I could see that if you find the values continuously changing, so that means it might be a linear data.
So okay, so suppose they are continuously changing, so you are saying it is a linear data?
I'm saying there are chances that it can be a linear data if the target variable is it's continuously changing, or like we have variance in the target variable just by looking at the data. I'm saying.
Target variable. See, target variable we'd never touch for any kind of ED or analysis, right?
Okay.
Target variable is just a class of your data set, so that you don't have to see at all.
Okay.
Okay.
I think there is a concept called in linear like vectors. Like if you can present two variables in terms of the other variable, like
but the problem is suppose you cannot only judge on the basis of two dimension. You have to take all the dimensions together. They might be now 100 dimensions. So all those 100 dimensions you have to see together, and you have to get on to the conclusion on that if it is a linear or a non-linear data set. Yes, Disha.
No, I was just imagining the graph of a linear data. So if my x value increases, my y value increases. Okay.
Okay, that is a linear relationship, right? So if my x is increasing, my y is increasing, or if x is increasing, y is decreasing, linear relationship or non-linear relationship, but that you can get between the two variables. Now here we are having 10 or 12 variables. So two variables you identified with respect to each other. But is your data set non-linear in nature? Whole data set?
I don't know about that. Because I was thinking about categorical data, then how is it possible to frame them linear? Because numerical data.
Yes, so see, I just want you guys to give it a thought process. Why I'm asking this question to you? Because after this, when I will be telling you the answer, so what happens if I'll not ask these questions? What will happen? You will forget this, whatever I will tell you. So now if you have done a lot of brainstorming, you have thought of like how it is possible, how I can see. Now if when I'll tell you the answer, you will remember it always. So now my answer for this is there is no way available to identify a linear or non-linear data set by just seeing a data set or by plotting some sort of charts or scatter plots or something. Up to some extent, 20 to 30%, yes, as Disha said or Rushang said or Rahul said, like, okay, this is what I can plot two variables and I can see. Up to certain extent you can check for the linearity, non-linearity, but not fully you can be satisfied from the result that, okay, I am sure that if it is linear or non-linear in nature. So as such, there is no way available into your machine learning area or analytics area that it is a linear or a non-linear data set. So now if I cannot find out that it is a non-linear data set or linear data set, so now how you will be finding out if I have to apply SVM algorithm or not? So now what actually we do, suppose you have taken this particular data set which is non-linear in nature. Okay, now what you have done, you have applied your decision tree algorithm and your accuracy is coming as 65%, 66%. Now what you have done lot of EDA, you have done outlier removal, you have done that 68% area taken, and you have done lot of correlation check, zero variance check. Now after doing all this EDA, you are only able to get the accuracy up to 65 to 68, or probably still it is 65, or very less change into the accuracy is happening. Okay, fine, this algorithm is not working. Let's try with another algorithm, random forest. I have tried with random forest, and again the same problem I am facing. It is giving me 67, 68%. Again I am doing all EDA, but it is not increasing. Let's try with logistic regression. Same problem, it is happening 65%, 68%. After doing all EDA and all analysis, let's try with SVM. When you have tried with SVM, you got the accuracy as 88%, 89, 92%. Drastic change with the accuracy provided by another models. If this particular scenario is happening, that means you should just think of, okay, this might be the case of non-linear data set. That means my data set is non-linear in nature, and that is why SVM is performing better, remaining algorithms are not performing better. So this is the only way to identify that you have to go with if your data set is linear in nature or non-linear in nature. Otherwise there is no foolproof way to identify that data set is linear and non-linear in nature. And again, this is one more thing which takes a lot of time when you work into the machine learning area, when you work with this kind of algorithm. So now, so as I told you, so will my SVMs will work for a linear type of data set also? So yes, the problems which can be resolved by decision tree, random forest, logistic regression can also be solved by SVM. SVM is one of the most superior algorithm. So now, can I do one thing? Let's always use SVMs only in any case. No. Why we never use SVMs in all the cases? Because SVM is again computationally expensive algorithm, and here to identify the most optimal values for your data is a tricky task. Now what happens? You have to try with different kind of kernels. So now what happens? You have to first try with your linear kernel, then polynomial kernel, then radial kernel. You have to go back and you have to check the accuracy. Similarly, there are two more different hyperparameters which you have to try, and you have to find out, okay, which is the most optimal value, and then you have to identify. So parsimony principle, which we have seen into the decision tree, it says, so I told you that parsimony principle we will discuss after discussing 4-5 algorithms. So what parsimony principle says, the work of needle should not be done by the sword. So if something can be possible from the smaller algorithm, non-expensive algorithm, and with better explainability, let's try with that algorithm first, and then go to the superior algorithms. Okay, so that rule you have to always follow to make your systems optimize and things optimize. Now one more question to you guys. So now this was the data set. Which other algorithm you know which can solve this kind of problem? What is the another ML algorithm is there which can solve this sort of problem? There is one more ML algo which you already know, which can handle the non-linear data, but I have not discussed at that time. I wanted to discuss it into the SVMs because I wanted to explain you first what is the non-linear and what is the problem of non-linear. So what is another algorithm can be used in place of SVMs in case we have the non-linear data set?
K-nearest.
K-nearest.
Yes. So K-nearest neighbor is the another algorithm which can also handle the non-linear data. So why it can handle non-linear data? No need to explain, right? Right or wrong?
Value of K is critical in selection.
No, but how it can handle the non-linear data? Why K-nearest neighbor is able to handle the non-linear data?
It's considering only the nearest neighbor.
Because it considers only the nearest neighbor. So that is why this particular problem can be handled by the K-nearest neighbors also. But the problem with K-nearest neighbor is again the same. computationally expensive algorithm. Okay, so but again easier as compared to support vector machine, but support vector machines are comparatively faster to k nearest neighbor. It's not that computationally expensive how your KNN is. So mostly we are avoiding KNN, but KNN is again a superior algorithm when it is come on to the handling of the non-linear data. So now these are the interview questions coming up. So that's why I told you always you can never say that this algorithm is best, this algorithm is bad. Each and every algorithm is having their own pros and their own cons. You have to understand those pros and cons, you have to understand those concepts, relate those concepts, and then you have to give the answer. Okay, so now let's talk about another parameter. So this is called as kernel function. So kernel function is a hit and try method because we cannot see the data and identify that which kernel will be used. So as per the accuracy, you have to do the hit and try of the different kernel. Now another value is C parameter. So C is a regularization parameter that controls the trade-off between the achieving a low training error and a low testing error, that is ability to generalize your classifier of to unseen data. In simple terms, C represents the width of the classification purpose. So basically C is nothing. C just represent your this boundary width. So C has been represented by this width. When your C will be high, width will be low. When your C will be low, your width will be high. So in somewhere in between, you have to find out the optimal value of C where your accuracy will be high. Because now what will happen if you will be keep on increasing the value of, keep on decreasing the value of C, your margin will be keep on increasing. Then what happens, plus and minuses will come and mixed with each other, and your model will become less accurate. Accuracy will go down less than 100%. If you will be keep on increasing the decreasing the value of C, increasing the value of C, width will be keep on decreasing. So width will be keep on decreasing, then your again same problem, your classification will not be happening properly. So somewhere in between you have to find out the optimal value of C to get the maximum highest accuracy. So again it is a hit and try parameter. Optimal value of C lies in between, which needs to be calculated on the basis of model accuracy. Now another important parameter is gamma.
Sorry to interrupt,
Yes.
but I did not get the use of C here. I did not get the concept.
So C is basically deciding this boundary width in your data. So if your data is having this data, so you are designing the boundary for linear classifier. So what should be the width of this boundary, that you have to decide. That is, your C value is deciding this particular boundary width. Okay, so boundary width should not be more. If it will be more, it will cover all the data points in between, then thresholds will be wrong. If it will be very less, then again it will be a problem. So you have to find out a proper margin by selecting a particular number. Now how to select that particular number, again I have to show you into the graph or into particular code part when we will go. So another thing is gamma. So gamma parameter defines, basically gamma is the parameter which controls the overfitting in your model. So overfitting in your model, I'll tell you how to find out and control the overfitting in the model. So gamma, try to understand. Okay, gamma is somewhat trickier to understand. I will show you what is basically gamma and how it controls the underfitting. Simple example I'll take and I will show you. So suppose this is the margin, okay, my classifier margin, suppose, okay, supported by this point and supported by this point. Okay, now what is happening, this is class plus, this is class plus, and this is class minus. Okay, now what happens, the diagram looks very bad. Let me draw it again. It's a lot of confusion. Plus, 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 minus, 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 minus. Let's draw only a line. Okay. Now, what happens in this case? Suppose Okay, right now accuracy of this particular model when I will be training my SVM model will be 100%. Okay, data set is simply separable. Now what happens? I'm adding, so this is a training accuracy I'm talking about. Okay. Now suppose there is one more value available, minus. Okay, and here there is one value available, suppose plus. Okay, now at the time of training, what will be the accuracy now? What will be the class predicted for this particular value and for this particular value? Anyone?
For minus plus, or plus minus.
So my data, my model will predict minus. Why it will predict plus for that particular pointer?
Because
It is in the negative side of the plane.
Because what happens, the features, it is showing if any of the particular feature, suppose this is height and suppose this is weight. So whenever height is more than 10, I am saying that it should be class plus. So this is what my model has learned, right? Whenever height is less than 10 or weight is something, so it should be always class minus. This is what my model has been trained on. Now what is happening? When at the time of training accuracy, when you will be checking, this point will be having the height is more than 10. So what your model will do? Model will predict this as a plus. Okay, so wrong prediction will happen. Now what happens? This is one scenario. Now what your gamma parameter does, so if you will be tuning your gamma values and all that values together, so suppose this is one class and plus, so what it will do, gamma parameter, when you will be keep on increasing, so what it will do, it will do something like that, and it will do something like that. Okay, now what will happen is still it will be able to identify this minus as a minus, and accuracy, when training time accuracy you will be checking, my model will be able to predict 100% accuracy, and it will be able to tell yes, this is plus even though value is lesser. So now on this particular point my model has been trained. Now what will happen when you will go into the production? So suppose a point came, suppose there is one point came. Okay, so what should be the class of this point? What should be the prediction for this point in the as per you by seeing the data?
I cannot see the point.
Anyone?
Plus.
It should be plus. Now what my model will predict?
Minus.
Model will predict minus because you have done overfitting. Okay, so this is called as the problem of overfitting. So you can when you will be tuning up the parameter gamma, so gamma you can set up in this particular way where it will try to avoid overfitting. So basically gamma is a parameter which avoid these kind of overfitting problems. So now what happens, I'll show you some diagrams which I have taken. So
this
you see,
can happen with the C parameter as well. What is the difference between C and gamma?
C is a width. C is a width.
So if we keep on increasing C, it will also lead to overfitting.
Yes, both the parameters can lead to overfitting. So now gamma, here you see this is a iris data set. So you have three classes available: setosa, versicolor and versosa. Now what happens when gamma value is equal to 0, it has done the classification like that. But when you will be increasing the gamma is equal to 10, now what is happening, this red dot you are seeing, so this basically the features are of yellow class, but actually this particular points belong to red class in the training data set. Similarly, if you will be keep on increasing more, so what you will be find out, there are few points available into the red class which actually belongs to your yellow class into the training data set. But what will happen if you will do this kind of thing? Tomorrow when the data will come, model will not be able to generalize and it will do the wrong predictions. Okay, so again you have to find out that optimal value of gamma where my accuracy will be highest. Okay, so in this case, gamma is equal to 0 is giving you the highest accuracy, but on different data sets, probably gamma is equal to 10 give you highest accuracy, or 100 may give you the highest accuracy. So gamma value can belong into infinity to up to infinity, C values can go up to infinity. You have to find out the most optimal values for your gamma by using the particular hit and trial method. Okay, so that is basically your gamma parameter and C parameter does. So any doubts with respect to gamma parameter? Any doubt what is overfitting here and how overfitting happening and why we should avoid it, why it has to be tuned?
Can you show the diagram again? So in this, where is the C, width of C considered?
So this is a 3-dimensional graph. So this is what basically in a 3-dimension manner the width is increasing. It is not a 2-dimension. For making you understand, I have taken 2-dimensional graph where I was showing you the width. Now in 3-dimension graph, it is difficult to show you the width of the system. So it is basically width of a plane. So we cannot show it onto the paper. So now I'll take you through the code, and I'll just try to make you understand how we run it and how we try to solve the problem using SVM. So basically this is your dataset voice.csv. So these many columns are available into my voice.csv. Lot of columns are there, and label is male or female. So this is basically a voice data. So what they have done, they have collected the points for different kind of voice frequencies. So for female and lot of female and male people, they have taken the features like their mean function, max function, mean dom, min dom, max tone, DF range, mode index, curt, skewness, whatever frequency can be caught from your voice sound, they have captured those frequencies, and they have created one data set, and they are saying that there was one person who is having these kind of voice frequencies, and he was a male. Similarly, these kind of frequencies, and she was a female. So they have done that particular, create that particular classification data set. Now they want to create one model where if I will be feeding my voice samples, so will I be able to find out that if it is a male voice or female voice? So that is the business problem here. So these kind of business problems are useful when people are making the automated caller systems where they can directly, some particular person is calling from that another side, the computer system can find out if it is a he or she, and accordingly it can give the Mr. and Miss and all that kind of designations to a particular customer. So there this kind of,
for identification of corona problems also they are using voice samples.
Yes, voice sample. That is also kind of classifier problem. So normal person is having different voice frequency, and a corona positive is having different voice frequency. So what they have done, they have taken that data set, and now they have trained your model. Now they will directly take the voice sample and directly feed it to the model without doing any test. SVM will tell you that if it is a corona positive or non-positive. So just think how fast will be the results, and how much money government will be able to save. This is where analytics and machine learning things comes into picture. Lot of saving it does in terms of money and time and costs. So now I'm doing a correlation check. So this is a very big data set. So lot of very big matrix came. So you have to check which all are correlated, and you have to remove them. So correlation check I have done. Then finally I am doing the null value check. There is no null value available into my data. There are 21 columns available, and 3168 samples are available, and shape and number of male available 1500, female again 1584. So same number of male and female are available into my data set. Now feature separation. So I am segregating the X and Y. So I have separated X and Y, and then what I am doing, I am doing the feature scaling. So you have to do the scaling here and label encoding. So label encoding is simply you have to do for your target variable, because target variable is male female, so you have to convert it into 1010. So simply label encoder will do the 1010 encoding, which we have used into your decision tree algorithm as well. Okay, now standard scaler will do the standardization of data, because your data having different kind of ranges here. Some values are into the 0.00 range and some values are 0.000 kind of range. So you have to do the scaling also. So scaling we have done here by using the standard scaler method. Now training and test split, test size 20%, training size 80%. Now we will do hit and try in SVM, how we did it into decision tree. Then I will show you a grid search CV method as well. So now what happens, SVM is available into your sklearn library. Now I am just with default hyperparameters, I am fitting xtrain and ytrain and predicting the accuracy score. So my test score is coming as 97%. So 97% accuracy is coming in one shot itself. Okay. Now similarly, now I'm using kernel is equal to linear. So with linear kernel, I am getting again 97% accuracy. Let's use polynomial kernel. Polynomial kernel is giving me 95% accuracy. Okay. Now similarly, you can try with the radial kernel as well and check the value. Now you have to optimize the hyperparameter C. So I'm telling you both the method. One method is manual method, another method is grid search CV method, which will give the solve the problem in one shot. So now C range, there is a list you provide range 1 to 26. Now from 1 to 26 on different value of C with kernel is equal to linear and C is equal to C. So this C will be coming from this particular data. C is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 26. And what I'm doing, I'm also doing the cross validation in the system. Scoring matrix, I'm using accuracy. So my SVM model I'm putting here X and Y, and I'm giving CV is equal to 10, and I'm keep on checking the scores. So these are the scores coming on different values of C. So C is equal to 1, this is the score. C is equal to 2, this is the score. Now can you see and tell me what is the optimal value? Where is the highest accuracy you are getting into this table?
Equals to 1.
C is equals to
1.
96.94, 96.87, 87, 94, 94, 9690, 9687, 84, 84, 84, 84. Okay. Okay. C is equal to 194, and here also we are getting 94.
Okay. What could be other values for scoring?
Any value it can be.
Like,
okay, scoring is equal to accuracy, RMSE, mean square error, root mean square error, residual sum of square error. Okay, so now you have found out that this is a basically graph. For the same thing, I am also implementing the graph. So graph probably will help us more. So what is the accuracy score and value of C? So where you are seeing the highest accuracy? We are seeing 1 and 6. Here also we are seeing on 1 and 6. So same thing, graph is also showing. Graph is somewhat easier to understand. Now what happens? Once you have identified this, suppose you are still not getting high accuracy. Suppose up to 1 to 26 your accuracies keep on going down. Then you have to increase this number from 26 to 36, 46, 100 until and unless you are not getting the highest accuracy. You have to keep on increasing and do a hit and try. I have plotted for till 26. If I was not getting any optimal value, then I have to again plot for the other numbers. Now after finding out this C, that 1 is the value, now what we will do, we will find out the value that it is 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5 or some other value. So that is also you have to again you have to do recalculation, and again you have to find out do re-optimization, and you have to find out again a new optimal value. So what this particular function will do, can anybody tell me what it will generate? np.arrange 0.1, 6, 0.1
will generate 0.126.
Create an
excluded
list and
okay, so
and having 0.1 difference.
Yes.
It will increase by
the
0.1.
increment of 0.1.
Yes, correct. So now on the same function, I'm running again and I'm trying to, again I will directly go with the graph. So again I'm seeing here where I'm getting the highest accuracy. So wherever I'm getting the highest accuracy, that will be becoming my most optimal value of C. Now further this also, if you want to go, you can do 0.01, 0.001, 0.0001. So infinite values are possible. So that is why we came up with grid search kind of problem, and that is the reason why we suggest not to use SVM until and unless it is needed. Otherwise you have to do lot of tuning in the SVM algorithm. So that is why first hand you should not use SVM algorithms, even though these are the superior algos, because there will be a lot of hit and try involved into these algorithms, and which is time consuming and confusing. Now gamma is value 0.0001, 0.001, 0.01, 0.1, 10, 100, 1000, 10,000 you can give, and I'm running with different values of gamma. Okay, same functioning I'm using, and I'm checking the accuracy. So I'm getting 96.30, 96. So this is basically 0.01 is the best value for gamma here. So this is how again after finding out 0.01, I am again plotting this graph you can see. So this is how you can optimize the values manually. Now let's call our friend directly grid search CV. Just define tuned parameters, pass the value of C, np.arrange 0.1 to 1, 0.1, kernel is equal to linear. Here you can write more kernel as well. You can write here for example your poly and all that. So kernels you can mention here as many as kernel you want to do, but your running time will keep on increasing. So I have only ran with few of the parameters, C and gamma values, and finally what will happen, grid search CV, pass your SVM model, pass your tuned parameter, CV is equal to 10, scoring method accuracy. So best accuracy it is getting 95%, and the model best parameters, most optimal parameters are C is equal to 0.9, degree is equal to 3, gamma is equal to 0.05, kernel is equal to polynomial. So that means this is a non-linear data set. Polynomial kernel is giving the highest accuracy with C value is 0.9, gamma value is equal to 0.05. So that is how you have to do hit and try. So in one shot directly you can go with the grid search CV in case you are working into the industry. But what happens when you are going for an interview perspective, you have to explain these methodologies. They have the question how you will do the hyperparameter optimizations in case of SVM. So there you have to explain about kernels, you have to explain about C, you have to explain about gamma parameter, you have to explain about the procedure how to optimize these values, and then finally in the last you have to explain about the grid search CV algorithm as well. So this is how your SVM algorithms work. And summary steps for classification: selecting the kernel function, gamma parameter and C value. You can use the value suggested by the SVM software, or you can set apart a validation set to determine the values, or you can use the grid search CV method. So this is all about your support vector machine algorithm. So any question, please ask.
Yeah, one question. This is classification algo, or we can also go for regression?
So there are two algorithms. This is a classification algorithm, SVM. There is something called as SVR, support vector regression. So support vector regression is a regression algorithm. That is a different algorithm. Support vector machine is strictly a classification algorithm.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yes, guys, please ask question. This is not a, it is a tricky algorithm. Okay, you ask question if you have any questions for this. So again, questions can come to you how you will handle the linear data set and non-linear data set. So in that non-linear data set cases, you have to explain and you have to talk about k nearest neighbor and support vector machine algorithms. Okay, and you have to explain how it works. Yes, Girish?
For grid search CV, it's giving like accuracy of 95%. So it's considering only the output of the accuracy, or is it considering some sort of overfitting or underfitting criteria as well?
everything considering it is giving you. So overfitting, how it find out internally, training and testing accuracy. So cross validation. So cross validation will internally handle all that problem. So why we do cross validation?
There is a lot of difference between training and testing.
Yes. So that is where cross validation will handle it internally. Overfitting problem.
Because
Right?
somewhere
We have discussed into the decision tree classes. Yes. Yes. Any doubt is there? You ask me that. Okay, this is where the confusion. So cross-validation is basically when your training accuracy is different and testing accuracy is very much different, very much distant from the training accuracy. So cross-validation we do. So it will give you the best sample for model training where you will be getting the optimal results for accuracy. So it will internally handle your cross-validation parameter. Already inbuilt, but concept you should know, because nobody will ask you into the interview to write these kind of syntaxes that okay, how to write cross validation, how to write the syntax for SVM, how to write the syntax for kernel. Nobody will ask you write a box plot into Seaborn library or write a bar chart into Seaborn library. Everybody will ask you what is cross validation, where we use box plot, where we use bar chart, where we use another kind of plot. So your main concentration should be always onto the conceptual part rather than coding. Coding should be always 20% concentration, 80% should be on concept. Coding can be done by anyone. Coding anyone can do, or if somebody cannot do, they can just go and copy paste from the Google. So coding is not a big target or big challenge, and everybody do copy paste into the industry, but the concept is which makes you different from the other available people. So concept is the most important thing. Whenever you get time, whenever you have some extra time available for doing some study related to Matplotlib, Seaborn or Pandas or NumPy, my request is don't waste your time into these kind of libraries. Waste your time in learning the concepts of statistics and machine learning, because 1 year later, when you will be into working into the analytics industry, you will realize that it was a mistake to attend the Seaborn classes. Rather, I should have learned statistics and machine learning. So don't waste your time into those kind of cases. Just do the focused study. Okay, always do the study in a focused way, on the targeted way. Otherwise, see, we should be a guided missile, we should not be an unguided missile. Okay, so unguided missile is very dangerous. So you should be a guided missile. You have to crack a machine learning job, you have to take the machine learning job. So in that particular thing you focus mode. And again, now we are into the last few of the last classes of machine learning. You have studied Python, you have studied statistics, machine learning, probably you have seen visualizations, or I don't know, Tableau, SQL has been covered for you. You think and you ask to yourself that what is more important, Seaborn library, learning Seaborn library, or learning the concepts, these kind of concepts, and whatever your heart say, do that. Okay, so my only suggestion is just try to find out, just try to select what are the most important topics, what are the most important aspects, because data science is very big domain. Okay, if now tomorrow if I'll start learning data structures because okay, I have to make my coding strong, let's start reading trees and linked list and data structure, stack and queues, then things will go for a toss. So everybody is belonging from different domains. So we are going into ML domain, you have to target those topics. So remaining things, Pandas, NumPy, just 1 day, 1.5 days, more than enough. Don't go much into that. Nobody ask also. And when even now today, even though you have attended 5 classes for Seaborn, still if today if I will tell you that you write plot a graph for confusion matrix without seeing into the Google, you cannot do. Still what you will do, you will search how to plot a confusion matrix or bar chart or bar graph or pie chart or donut chart, and you will just copy paste the code from there and then you will write. So why you are wasting 5 days into Seaborn classes? Rather study these concepts. I will always recommend study these concepts and focus on your capstone project. Okay, so just last week I have finished this this week I have finished this weekend batch, okay, last class. So there was one student who asked me that this question, that okay, I'm not feeling confident, like okay, how actually in real time things happen, what kind of challenges we are facing, and how I will, if suppose if interviewer will ask what kind of challenges you have faced during the projects which you have done into the industry or into your company in analytics and all, then how should I answer, sir? Because I am not confident. I haven't faced any kind of challenges till now. Simple thing. If you will not do capstone project, you will never understand those challenges. Okay, because all these codes which I am showing to you, these are the case studies which I am giving you. I am giving you some heads up. I'm giving you, okay, some reasoning behind that. But unless you will not apply these things on your own, there will be always a lack of confidence. And that is why I have introduced a capstone project into LearnBase syllabus. Because what happens, if I will share the code for that capstone project, then it's fine. Again, you will just see and you will say, yes, it can be, okay, aise ho jata hai, okay, it will happen like this, okay, he has done this zero variance check and all that. But what happens at the end of the day, even though you have done the capstone project, you understand very well capstone project, you will not feel confident. Why? Because the capstone project which I have given, you have done it into 1 day, 1.5 days. If you will do the same capstone project, you will take 1 month, 1.5 months, because you have to look for multiple things. You will be doing research on multiple things. That will give you the confidence. Okay. Getting multiple success never gives you the confidence. Getting multiple failures gives you the confidence. Okay. Bad experiences gives you the confidence to be successful. So don't try to target, okay, I should be needing the 100% accuracy. That will become a overfitting in your life as well. Just target to do in a smaller steps to improve yourself. Do capstone project, learn things, do hit and try, get failed, improve yourself. Until unless you will not be failing, you will never be learning and you will never be confident. So that much gyan from me today. I'm trying to put you on a track, so you guys should not be like differing from the track. So I'm feeling right now you are differing from the track, because I'm seeing that people are asking for Seaborn libraries and all that thing. So that should not happen. Guys, put your time. Don't worry about this much about the coding and all that. Coding, you just put 2-3 days of time and learn it. Remaining, put your time into statistics and machine learning things. If you will do capstone project, automatically lot of your questions will be resolved, lot of things will be resolved. So that's what everybody is having their own way of learning. This is just my advice and suggestion. You can do as per your choice, but this is how you should do. Okay, but I'm not against any of the approach, just suggestion.